Cards like TAMATOA Happy as a Clam were sometimes selling for $70 to $80 at peak. Even when they would settle, it would only hover around $50, which is still $200 for 4 pieces of cardboard. Cards like Maui Shark have always hovered around the $30 range, even when they weren't the most played card, which again is gonna run you $120 for some cardboard. Think back to the days of Diablo, even when people were dropping $100 or pretty close to it for just one copy of that card. With all of this in mind, it's clear to see why some people think Lorcana is simply too expensive to get into. But is this actually true? Is Lorcana too expensive to be sustainable, or is there perhaps a different perspective in mind? Well, we've got quite the discussion on this for you today, but before we get into it, my name is Willoughby. Thank you so much for being here. It is the Lore Chronicles, and I hope you enjoy the discussion. So there have been some whispers around the community that Lorcana overall is too expensive, and I think it's an interesting discussion, especially when you consider, right, cards like TAMATOA up until we saw this ban come through obviously recently, were, well, when it first dropped, $70 maybe. Well, started at 45, quickly shot up to 70. The foil I think peaked at like 80, right? And even it was like settling around $50 a card, right? So if you want 4 of, that's going to run you $200. And so obviously there's been some fluctuations with this new ban that's gone into effect, but the thing is, something like Diablo dropping down to $20, even with a ban, if that's going to see a rise in play, it's just going to go back up to 50, right? So it doesn't always have to be the new cards. Any card at any point in time, if it's a chase card, can go up to, like, let's say $50, $30 a pop, which is running players a lot of money, right, for 4 pieces of cardboard. So I'm just curious, like, what do you think about the prices of Lorcana? Do you think this game is getting to be too expensive?
Yeah, so the only other card game I ever played was Magic the Gathering. So Lorcana is a dream come true for me as far as money goes.
Oh wow. Well, so I've never played Magic. Lorcana is my first DCG. Haven't said that in a while. So what were the comparisons there with Magic prices?
Well, Magic, their version of DLCs change formats every few months. So you would have to have like a tier 1 deck from 3 different formats, which the prices varied wildly. But just even for what would be core constructed in this, that was standard. I mean, like the average deck was like probably $400 or $500. So I'm just used to decks costing $500. Like that's no sweat off my back, and not because like I made of money or anything, just because it's what I'm used to since I was a teenager. Not only that, if you ever decide to get out of a deck, you can always just sell them. So the fees and stuff on TCG Player and the sales tax is kind of like what you pay to rent the cards if you're not going to keep them forever. So they're, to me, this is normal.
Yeah, that's interesting actually, taking a look at some of these modern and even standard prices for some of these decks that like do well in these challenges.
Modern is a whole other animal. I used to play Affinity, and that was one of the cheaper decks when I played because it didn't have that many lands that were like fetch lands, dual lands, stuff like that. But even now, I believe Affinity is like over $1,000.
Looking at almost $1,500.
Okay, yeah. When I played Modern, luckily I was able to borrow stuff from stores. I'm sponsored by stores. I always have been, and yeah, if you wanted to, you either had to play one deck forever, and you were going to pay like $1,000 to $2,000. If you wanted to just be deeply invested in it, you're probably looking at $10,000 to $12,000 if you wanted to be able to switch decks on a whim.
Wow.
So,
so Lorcana isn't as bad as it could be. Is perhaps what I'm hearing. Right. No, but I think that's a good point. Is like this is ultimately par for the course with these types of games and types of hobbies. I do think there is something to say as well, just about like, we're not saying the game's not expensive, because I actually was quite sad to see that I would not be able to buy into some of the Sapphire decks this time around. I really thought TAMATOA was quite cool, and only having one, I had to get rid of it because I needed the money. But I think that's the thing, is like, what's great about this game, especially after these bans, is it doesn't have to be a Sapphire deck, and there's lots of viable options out there. And so you pointed out actually some decks that did well over at SSG that weren't as expensive. So I don't know if you want to talk about just like what we saw there.
Yeah, so I sent you Alex's deck, right? I
Mhm.
don't know what you have up on screen right
I've
now.
got it here
People
for
that
you.
don't know, I can't see her screen. So I sent you Alex's deck. What was it? $83?
86.
$86. Yeah. And I mean, he crushed it, right? Like, he was ruining people's lives. He started the tournament 4-0.
Yeah.
If you go to locals, that's a win. Like,
Yeah, you said
so
he made top 16.
I'm going to just assume that most of the people that are having to take issue with the price of cards are the people that are playing mostly in locals and like set championships,
Mm.
because like I've spent more on plane tickets than I've spent on my collection, right? So if you're someone who's traveling a ton, then you're probably not going to have an issue getting the cards that you need. However, this is just a good example that if you spent $86, and I don't even know how many new cards were in this deck. Like, this deck has been viable since I don't know how long, like forever. Like, just random hyper aggro. You know what? I'm just gonna hope you stumble, and I'm gonna take advantage and just end the game on like turn 5.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think even to like compare this $86 deck that did place in the top 16 of this like over 100 and something player event, comparing it to looks like Mitch Alvaro. Do you know if he won or if he was just one of the?
No, he was in the top 16 as well.
Okay, so just like
Or
comparing
no.
it.
Oh, I didn't know his real name. Sorry, he won.
Okay, Mitch Alvaro actually won the event. Shout out. And that comparatively is with a $420 deck, right? At the time, obviously, we're looking at these prices from, pre Hiram ban, which has kind of changed things up a bit. But like at the time, right? So you could top 16 with an $86 deck, and then you could potentially win with a $400 deck. That's one way to look at it. I think another way to look at it though is you could win with an $86 deck, right? Because when you make it to the top 16, it's not to say, oh well, you didn't go farther because you weren't good enough. At that point, it's just variance, right? Clearly, both of these decks displayed strengths that were able to make it through a whole field of players, and one minute difference or different tiebreaker could have set either of these players up for a swap in placements. And I think that's something that I'm never gonna pretend that like $420 or even $86 is something to sneeze at. Obviously, everybody's got their own like subjective way of viewing finances, right? Of course, it's all relative. But so I'm not saying any money is no money. But I do think that it's important to emphasize with these things, if we love this game and we want to make it happen, it doesn't always have to happen the same way that everybody else makes it happen. And what I mean by that is you don't have to play these cards that are super expensive. There are other viable options that you just you don't get to play with the new shiny toys like Happy as a Clam, but you can still make a dent. And you actually had said something to me before we started filming that I think is important for me to kind of pass the baton to you on, of like the solution to not being able to afford these shiny cards to add into these decks is not to just budget deck it out. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, like, hilariously enough, I forgot to mention this in the last video we recorded. I sold out of that foil 1/2, that quest for 1 that costs 1 from the newest set. And when it quests, you banish an item to draw a card. Like, people are like, "Oh, this is the new Hiram." Yeah. So like, don't look at a deck and be like, how can I fit this into my budget? Right? Because I think you're just going to take a deck that is tuned to do a specific thing. And with too many changes, it is no longer that deck that is tuned to do that thing. I think instead of fitting the deck to your budget, fidget or get your budget in line with your deck. Like find a good deck that is already in your budget. Yeah, and like something else I had mentioned before we started recording was like look at like fishing, right? Like at the end of the day, Disney Lorcana is a hobby for 99.9% of people that play it. Like look at something like fishing. I could take my kids to the pond with a Barbie fishing pole and they can catch a fish, right? And then you have other people that are going to fishing tournaments that are broadcast on like ESPN too, that have $1,000 fishing pole. They have however much money in sonar fish finders. They have state of the art everything that either they bought or they're supplied by sponsors, stuff like that. You choose to do your hobbies however you want to do them. It is kind of where I'm getting at. Like, if you don't have the budget to go to DLCs, but you want to go play in locals, just find a deck that crushes locals, or just play a fun deck within your budget. Or don't play in any tournaments at all. Get 3 friends and play multiplayer. Like, there's so many ways to play Disney Lorcana.
Willow of the Future just quickly jumping in to clarify this point. I want to make sure nobody heard what Dick was saying as if you're too broke to afford a meta deck, too bad so sad, go play multiplayer. I think what we're actually saying here is the great thing about Lorcana, specifically after these Hiram bans, but even in general, is one, that there's so many different ways to play the game in different formats or what have you, but also, the meta is usually pretty diverse, and because of that, yes, you may have a meta deck that's super expensive, but you can also have a meta deck that's not as expensive and doesn't feature any new cards, right? So just wanted to clarify that we are definitely not saying if you're too broke to afford TAMATOA Happy as a Clam, like me, I own 0. Too bad, so sad, go play Rogue. I think what we're actually saying is there are multiple ways to engage in the meta, and some of those decks are cheaper and some of those decks are more expensive, and that's great. We love seeing metas where all kinds of cards are viable, even the ones that are like Belle and are just common cards, so they're never going to be too expensive. All right, back to the video. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's like ultimately what's so great about this game is, you know, it is what you make of it. And that's not to say like, well, if you want to be a competitive player, then, you know, suck it up, you got to dish out the funds. I think, again, just reiterating that this $86 deck, making it to top 16 shows that that's not the case. You can truly win with anything. I think the biggest piece here, and this is something that really for me is a struggle, and so if this is something that you struggle with as well as a player, I see you, I feel you, you know, but FOMO I think is really like what it comes down to, and being immune to FOMO as much as possible. I'm the worst at it, you know, especially when a new set comes out. I always tell myself I'm only going to buy a certain amount of product because otherwise the packs lose value. We'll talk about that in a second. And then, you know, I get there and I'm in my locals and I'm playing the sealed events or whatever it is, and I'm like, you know what? Just one more box, right? Or, oh, well, I gotta get a trove, right? For the cool new dice that I never use. Like, there's nothing wrong with the dice. I just have dice that I prefer to use.
Oh, there's something wrong with the dice.
Well, yeah, but
it's terrible.
But like, you know what I mean? So I think ultimately it comes down to like when you're in the moment, I always have to like, I catch myself in the car like doing like breathing exercises sometimes, and I'm like doing like affirmations for myself where I'm like, I will not spend more than $100 on Lorcana today. You know what I mean? Like, because it really is like, it's, you know, we all know it. That's why we love this game. We love to open packs, you know, we love to chase those cards, chase those enchanteds. Well, just one more pack. What if that's the one that has the enchanted TAMATOA Happy as a Clam, right? Like, this is part of the fun of TCGs, and like, we're not supposed to say it, but it's kind of like gambling, and people like gambling for some reason, you know. And so like, I get it. There's some rush and there's some excitement and there's some fun that come with these things, and you know, some people love to bling out their whole deck, and max rarity is what we call it, right? Max rarity their deck, yeah. All enchanteds. So I get it. You know, it's hard to see all of these players playing the best deck and feeling like, well, I don't have the means right now to play that deck. I got to make it happen, you know, whichever way. And if I can't, then like Lorcana's too expensive and it sucks. I get it. I get FOMO, really, truly, I do. I have a big problem with it. Honestly, just speaking from the heart. But I think that like at the end of the day, you know, this is just a game, it's just a hobby. And like when you let go of FOMO, I think you almost are able to have a little bit more fun, or just like explore the game in a different way than if you were just doing what everybody else is doing. I'm not gonna, take a jab at net decking, because I am a very proud net decker. But like, that is to say that like there's so much more that you can discover if you just kind of let go of like, I have to play what everybody else is playing. And that's just like another great way to interact with the game. So I feel you for all my FOMO brothers that experience the FOMO out there. But I think this is something that we can get through, and we can learn to play other types of deck strategies, even if they're not the shiny new toys that we get each set. But anything you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, my friend Tiffany got featured on the Free Mountain because she won a set championships with Ruby Emerald Evasive, and then got second place at a set championships with Ruby Emerald Evasive, and the deck was less than $20.
Yeah, and that was like several sets ago. That was like when that was a really
Yeah.
surprise pick there, that it was able to do so well. I remember that.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Hmm.
So like, I do have some advice for people.
Hmm.
One is like, get some friends, because when you pull resources together, as long as you can trust everyone to like lend people cards and stuff like that, or even just be like, hey, I don't ever play these colors, I will trade you or whatever you have, stuff like that. Like, it is supposed to be a socializing experience. Like, I know I am one who like, sometimes I travel with the team, sometimes I'm just solo. And before I was on the Free Mountain, I was always the guy just sitting in the corner that didn't ask anyone for anything. So try to make some friends, and you're gonna have an easier time getting tier 1 decks.
I think
Like,
that's
no,
so true.
yeah, yeah,
Because like even for me, having like for me, I guess my piece of advice to add to that would be to pick a locals and go to it regularly. Because if you go somewhere regularly, if in anything, you're gonna eventually get familiar with people there and naturally form friendships, right? And so it's gotten to a point where the guys in my locals, I can message them a whole list of 20 carts. I only have 2/3 of my deck, and I need to borrow the other 20, and people show up and they let me borrow them. And that's because we have a rapport with each other now, and we trust each other, and you can lean on the community in that way. And for the people that are like, oh, nobody would ever let me borrow, like whatever, that's then like meet some other players, talk to some more people, try a new locals, right, with some more familiar and kind faces. I think that's like one of the great things about Lorcana, is that it is like such a welcoming community so far, and the way that it's been building itself up to be. You see like these stories of people who went to DLC Melbourne in Australia, who like completely left their decks at home and were able to like find the cards within like a couple of days to turn around and play in that tournament. And that's just the kind of community that we've been fostering here in the Lorcana side, which is amazing to see. So not all hope is lost, and that's just the kind of have the positive aspect of this conversation, is like, this is what you make of it, and it can be cheap and you can still win, or you can lean on others. Something though that I think is worth talking about as part of the finances of Lorcana is pack value, or lack of pack value. And I know you had some things you wanted to say about that. So what do you want to get into here about pack value?
Oh, so now it's time not to be so nice. Yeah, and like, what's funny is these are two different crowds, right? Like, the people that have been complaining about, I'm opening cases and cases of cards and I'm not getting my money back, are obviously not the same people who are like, hey, I have like this amount of spare money a week and I still want to have a hobby. So everyone that we were just giving advice to, we're not making fun of right now. But like, if you're like spending thousands of dollars on cases of cards and then you're complaining you didn't make your money back, like, yeah, obviously. Otherwise, like, why would the stores sell them? They could just open them if they're going to make a profit guaranteed every single
Mm-hmm,
time.
mm-hmm.
So there have been people complaining for over a year now, aside from chapter 1 when it was very short printed. Oh my god, you just lose money opening booster packs. And now I'm seeing the same exact people being like, oh my god, the booster packs sold so well because you can make money opening them. Like, I don't know which you wanted. Did you like, I think these people just can't be pleased. It's very frustrating. But, what do you think? Like, do you feel more inclined to buy booster packs when there's actually something to find? And is that good for business?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because like this is a problem, right? People were like, "Oh, packs aren't worth anything. There's no reason to open any packs." And then we got a couple of chase cards, as good as something like Scrooge and Tamatoa, where now all of a sudden, Arcasia's Island's flying off the shelves in ways that we had never seen before, really, besides from set one. Because I remember when there was overflow of product, and it would be like, our LGSs couldn't sell enough of the stuff. They'd be like, "Are you sure you guys don't want to buy more packs?" Compared to
I
now, not everybody can
I
get
bought
product.
boxes. I bought boxes at a thrift store.
That's crazy.
Okay,
That's crazy.
like people that watch TFM know that I got like 40 boxes at a thrift store of Into the Inklands.
That's
Okay,
crazy.
so like obviously, I think we've all come to realize this set was short printed, but people didn't know that when they pre-ordered as much as they did, seeing the prices of Enchanted Tamatoa and regular Tamatoa, stuff like that. Like you can't complain that cards aren't worth anything and then complain that cards are too expensive.
Right.
You just can't be in both camps at the same time. It's insane. It's like a professional fence sitter. Uh, I, for one, it doesn't affect me whatsoever.
Yeah.
Right. Uh, would it be cool if cards were worthless? Not really. Like it's a trading card game. It's like if the cards were not going to be worth anything whatsoever, they might as well just sell you all of the
All of
cards
the
as
cards at
if it
once.
was
Yeah.
a board game, right?
Right.
Do I think cards should be so expensive that like people have to think, should I buy like a car or should I buy this deck? Also, no. But like, I'm not gonna complain if one or the other happens. I'm just going to accept it because I like to play the game.
Yeah, I think you really nailed it, right? It's not that there's like we're in support of any one extreme. I think it's just like acknowledging the middle ground of like some cards, that are chase cards are going to be worth a little bit more. And sometimes, when cards, let's say, aren't as enticing, packs aren't going to be worth as much. I think for me, I err on the side of I would rather the packs not be worth as much, strictly because I think for me on a consumer side, I really like things like TCG Player and being able to just buy the singles that way, or pick up $20 for a whole play set of the bulk common uncommons, and just kind of pay however much here for the rares or the super rares or the legendaries I need as the meta calls for them. But if you're somebody who likes to do a collection of master set and there's fun in opening up the packs, more power to you. Right, but I agree. I don't think it should really be in either one direction. We don't want our cards to just be worth nothing. And there is like a little bit of fun involved in like when you do get a chase card like Happy as a Clam. That Enchanted, I think, is just, even if the card, sinks in value because of the bans that took effect. I think the art is so cool and like the effect is so cool that card's always going to be worth a little bit more money, and it's a legendary, so it's always going to be a little bit more of a chase. But yeah, I agree. I think ultimately people need to stop catastrophizing. Not everything is the end of the world in either direction.
Yeah, I am someone who will just buy 4 of every card when the set comes out. It's generally around $1,000. And then if you think about it pragmatically, it's 4 times a year.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm spending $4,000 a year on my hobby. If you just divide that into like a daily price or a monthly price, even, like, you will probably find that you also spend that amount of money on something that's not necessary in your life too, just as a human being, whether it be someone who enjoys video games or getting a frappuccino daily, right? So it's like not that crazy if you think of it on a macro level. I do wish that I do wish that Disney Lorcana, Ravensburger, found a way to make the booster packs more desirable
Mm-hmm.
without them strictly being the playable cards. So if we look at, say, Pokemon, there will be like secret rare cards that are quite expensive, but then there will also be a normal version in the same exact set that is quite affordable, right? And we have that with Enchanteds, but I don't often see Pokemon making bad cards and unplayable cards into these really high really difficult to find chase rarities, like a one per case thing, like an enchanted.
Hmm.
Like it's really disheartening to open an enchanted of the wall or like insert any $50, $25 enchanted when you had to spend $450 to open a case to even try to get one, right? So I would love to see more like specialized versions of cards that are already in the set. So I can be a cheap gamer that plays minimum rarity, but then like Diabolito can roll in with a $20,000 deck if he wants to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I obviously, financial situations, like we said earlier, are all relative, and it really can be a little bit different. This is just our perspective on it. We'd love to hear what you guys have to say. At the end of the day, don't let the FOMO get you, and don't spend all your money chasing enchanteds because you might just pull the wall. But I think that's gonna be it for us. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please make sure to leave a like. Don't forget to subscribe. Comment on the video after you've watched the whole video, and we'll catch you.
Too late. It's too late. They've already commented.
They've already commented.
They're
We'll
like, that guy with red hair, he's a moron.
And they'd be right. Bye.
Yeah.